Hi, everybody, and welcome to today's presentation on breathwork for managing stress. My name is Yvette, and I am your host for today's presentation. Now, a couple of things about breath and the power of breath from somebody who has been practicing specific breath work for about 13 years now that is specific and intentional because, fun fact, breath is the only bodily function that is both involuntary as well as voluntary. Everything else functions on its own time and its own way of doing things, whereas breath is something that is controlled. And probably for me personally, in my opinion, it has the greatest impact on the body systems in its entirety. And what I mean by that is when it comes time for your breath, another fun fact for you, we are able to release toxins from the body every single day. Your breath is the one way that you are able to release 70% of the toxins from your body, and you can actually lose 2 pounds of toxins every single day. The rest of the toxins leave the body through sweat, through urine, through feces. Now, how I came to this practice of a voluntary breath practice, and if you ever come to any of my classes, which I host at Whitaker Wellness, I teach yoga nidra meditation, and I also teach yoga therapy. And it is not uncommon for someone who is new to my classes to leave saying, thank you for reminding me to breathe, because we spend so much time in our days subconsciously breathing that we end up doing more harm than good to the overall health and wellness of the body. So not only am I certified yoga teacher, yoga nidra teacher, yoga therapy teacher, as well as a breath work facilitator and breath work for trauma specifically, I am also a functional medicine certified health coach. And in functional medicine, we have 5 pillars of wellness. We have sleep, we have stress, we have nutrition, exercise, and relationships. Now, that might sound rather convoluted, but from a functional medicine perspective, we look at all the pillars and how they're working together to support the body systems. And if you think about it, if you're stressed out, it is affecting all of the other pillars. Your stress interrupts your sleep. Your stress, you either eat too little or you eat too much. Your stress, you either over-exercise or under-exercise. And when you're stressed, you are short-tempered. You have, or I should say we, because it's a universal human condition, we also are short with our relationships, meaning that we have less patience with those who are closest to us. And also when we're that stressed, we're also not making executive function decisions through the prefrontal cortex because everything is being driven by the amygdala. So when we integrate and with intention, breath into a daily practice, and you sprinkle it throughout the day, you begin to recognize that you can undo stress. You can manage your stress from a place of response, not reaction. When you integrate conscious breath, it will improve your sleep. When you integrate conscious breath, you're going to digest your food better. You're going to be more nutrient rich. When you integrate conscious breath into your relationships, you are definitely moving from a reactive habit patterns in your relationships to then having space to then respond in your relationships. And when you integrate conscious breath into your exercise, you find that your breath is actually giving you more energy to exercise more fully. I can't tell you how many times I walk through the gym in the mornings when I go to teach, and there are all these people, both men and women, who are either on, weights or on a machine, and they're holding their breath and trying to lift a weight and then letting go and then relaxing back out of that, but not really letting the breath breathe itself through the body. And that's how it's so, so important. And so when it came time for the 5 pillars of wellness, I decided that from my practice, I was going to add a 6th pillar because like I just mentioned, Breath impacts everything in our lives. We just forgot about it. We just don't pay attention to it. So when it comes time for breath as a law of averages, throughout your entire lifetime, you will have probably 700 million breaths. On the average, about 24,000 a day, and multiply that through a lifetime. And in the world of yoga that I come from, and the school of yoga I come from, my teacher would say, your breath is your mind made visible. So when you want to change your mind, change your breath. And it sounds pretty simple, but think about it. Think about how little that you pay attention to your breath throughout the busyness of a day. And 9 times out of 10, it's something that you neglect until you've gotten so far down the rabbit hole that you're either gasping for breath or you're having a need to sigh or a need to yawn because the body needs oxygen. And breath, when it's conscious breath, you can actually draw more oxygen into the body, and you are clearing the body of dis-ease, of stress, of all the things that are causing problems in the whole body system. So, like I said, breath is the only bodily function that is both voluntary as well as involuntary. It can be a force, it can be a medicine, it can be almost like a mechanism that will release superhuman power because when you're allowing your lungs to expand fully. And fun fact, there are actual free divers in the world that have been recorded to hold their breath out for 12 minutes. Yes, not 12 seconds, 12 minutes. So you can see that, for yogis and sages and practitioners of yoga, what they have known for thousands of years is something that has come to light more and more in our Western culture as people have begun to recognize that the quality of our breath has begun to become compromised ever since the Industrial Revolution, when we started to go from manual labor, physical labor, to mechanical, where our foods were soft and easy to chew, and it changed the angle of the jaw. I mean, we're looking back at the mechanics of how it's changed. And in the world of women, and if we look at epigenetics and that we have generational memories, Bruce Lipton is a brilliant scientist who writes about this, by the way, Bruce Lipton, Lipton. And I am a firm believer that for all the centuries of women with corsets, with girdles, with pantyhose, with Spanx now, that we have forced our breath up into our upper chest, and we're not breathing into the belly. We don't soften our breath into the belly. And the one thing that's so amazing about the belly is that when you're stressed out and you're only breathing up here, your vagus nerve is sending alarm signals to the brain, which is then stimulating the amygdala, dumping more and more cortisol into your system. And the prefrontal cortex can no longer do its job, which is to manage the firing of the amygdala. Now, we need that. We need cortisol. Cortisol is a good thing, not a bad thing. We need the amygdala to operate as it was designed to do, because that's fight, flight, or freeze. That's how we stay alive. But at the same time, when all that is overriding the prefrontal cortex, we are no longer able to make logical decisions. So ultimately, how we breathe has just gotten continually worse over the past 100 plus years. And in doing so, a lot of people have become mouth breathers versus nose breathers. And as a yoga teacher and as a breath work practitioner and facilitator, nostril breath is, to me, is the ultimate, because your nose is almost like the HVAC to your body, so it keeps the germs out. Whereas if you're open mouth breathing, science is showing that people who are open mouth breathers have worse health and more conditions than people who are nostril breathers. So again, if we're looking at how things have gone on the uprise, we're looking at Asthma has gone up in numbers, anxiety, ADD, even psoriasis, they can tie to breath work. Because again, remember, your breath is releasing the toxins from the body, 70% of that. Now, we have an opportunity through conscious breath and finding a conscious breath practice that works for us, that we can actually hack our own nervous systems. We can override the amygdala and we can find our way back into our body, and we begin to manage our stress in ways that is no longer needing a glass of wine or a bottle of wine for that matter at the end of the day. It decreases the need to smoke a cigarette or to take a pill to calm yourself down. And when we can take and we can hack and almost like jumpstart our nervous system to work properly, then we can begin to control our immune health, improving our immune health. And this, in essence, restores our own health. Now, the one thing I will say from my own personal experience is for years, I was a child who always suffered from some form of bronchial illness around Christmas time. It was not unheard of that my mom would be taking me to the doctor's office on Christmas Eve or Christmas Day because I had to have a shot of some sort. So bronchial issues were always part of my reality. And it's one of the reasons why I left my main career, because for years I worked on cruise ships, and unfortunately the number of chemicals that were used on board compromised my lungs to a point where I ended up in the infirmary one day needing a nebulizer and steroid shots in order to open up my lungs so I could actually breathe. And when I woke up the night before at 3 o'clock in the morning, not being able to breathe, I was in a full-on panic because I thought, well, if I try and call for help, no, I couldn't. I could dial the numbers, but I was panicking so much. And luckily, I was able to get myself out of my own way and decrease my panic by moderating my breath. And thank goodness I had the skill set to do that. But it was the reason why I stopped that and then eventually went on to go live in a yogic ashram. I lived there for 3 years where I became a teacher, a practitioner, a mentor, and I was able to actually work out the bronchial congestion that I'd had in my lungs for most of my life. Now, how did that happen? It sounds almost like too good to be true, but in a yogic environment, we used to practice a breath practice called Kapalabhati. It is not something I'm going to teach you today, but it is a very forceful skull breath practice that it pumps the lungs in a way that worked out old congestion I still had in the lower lobes of my lungs. And ever since that was in 2012. So all of 2012, 2013, 2014, for 3 years, 365 days a year, I practiced Kapalabhati, as well as other forms of breath work. But I saw the transformation in myself. I saw the transformation in my own health. And since that time, I have not had any bronchial issues since that time. So even when during the pandemic and when I did actually have COVID, the one thing I didn't have to deal with is any kind of bronchial problem. And that is, to me, is a miracle. So ultimately, changing how we breathe is not that we're going to just only live longer, but we're going to live better. We're going to improve the quality of our lives by having conscious breath. Now, I have people who say, well, I've been breathing all my life. Obviously, I'm alive and I'm here. So why do I need to learn this? Well, again, breath will help you manage the mind that is causing the stress and anxiety in your life, because you'll no longer have to be so attached to what's going on in your head. So when you get stressed out and you can't function because you're almost frozen, wondering, well, what am I going to do next? Or how am I going to solve this problem? If you lean back away from the problem, away from the stress, and give yourself some time to take some really good breaths and get your body moving, so to speak, this is going to change your perspective. It's like changing the lenses on your glasses. So I thought that with doing this today, I would give you a, a couple of breath techniques. And they serve different purposes, but at the same time, the important part is that we do take full breaths. And by doing that, it's taking the breath from up here and bringing it down into the belly. Down, I mean, you might have read about diaphragmatic breath. So a lot of what we're doing today and what you would find in my classes is to focus breath in the belly, so that if it was a belly rising or expanding with breath in, that would rise and expand the chest, and then you would finish the inhalation at the throat, and then breathe out, throat, chest relaxes or contracts, and then you pull the belly back towards the spine. By engaging your belly, a couple of things happen here. Number one, your digestive juices get kickstarted. So not is the food only laying in your belly, in your stomach and through your intestines, but you're now actually getting things to work better. And by having your digestive juices working better, you are getting the nutrition that your body is feeding off of from the food that you eat. The other thing about a belly breath itself is that when you begin to breathe with a tension in the belly, the vagus nerve is in the gut. That's where fingers of it start. So that nerve is something that then transports messages from the belly up through the center line of the body and then into the brain. So the vagus nerve begins to send those signals telling your brain that you are ready to rest and digest, to shift into a restorative pattern. And you literally hijack the amygdala so that the amount of cortisol that's dumping into your system from the constant stress and anxiety is beginning to lessen. It's backing off of its edge. So you're beginning to rebalance your body. So that's why it's so important for the diaphragmatic breath. So I thought today I would give you a couple of techniques, like I said. The first one is called a physiological sigh. Now, in a physiological sigh, it's going to be a two-step inhalation, which means that you're going to inhale and do so slowly through the nostrils. At the top of the inhalation, there's actually still space in your lungs to receive more oxygen. So you're going to do a short, almost like a short gasp, but through the nose, almost like a sniff, like you're going to sniff, a rose or something. So it's a nice, long, slow inhalation. At the top, that little bit of to pull up the last bit of air. And it actually, when that last bit of air goes into the lungs, it expands all of the pockets in the lungs. It is kind of like flesh out. And then when you exhale through the mouth, you exhale fully, detoxify the lungs, detoxify the body. And we're going to do that for 5 rounds, just to give you an idea of how it's going to feel. And I will demonstrate it first. And then what I would encourage you to do is that when you go to practice it yourself, close your eyes and just listen to the promptings, because this way you're not distracted by what's behind me. You're not looking at me. You are focused entirely on your breath, and you're going to find out how easy it is to do this practice. But I'll equate it to this before we go into it. Have you ever seen a child who is absolutely distraught, and then they start to cry? And then what happens? They, it's the same idea. It is a form of self-soothing that we have done since we were children, only we stopped doing it because we thought it was inappropriate and we don't like to cry in front of other people. But what's so beautiful about any one of these techniques I'm going to show you is these can be done anywhere at any time of day. But I will tell you that this physiological sigh will help you de-stress yourself at any hour of the day. And it is beautiful to do when you are in bed at night and everything that you didn't do happens to show up in your brain, and your mind just starts running like a hamster on a wheel. So this physiological sigh is one that I will use in bed at night when I've got a lot on my plate and things need to get done, and I've got deadlines and my stress levels are super high. So again, we're going to have the double inhalation followed by one long exhalation, and it's slow and steady. We're not here to run a race. It's not a nothing like that. Okay, so nice slow inhalation at the top, that little bit of a filler, and then okay. So just I'm going to demonstrate it once, and then I'll have you close your eyes, find your center, and repeat after me. Okay. That was a demonstration of the physiological sigh. Okay. And remember, as you do this, the miracle that your lungs are, if you were to unravel the tissue in your lungs, they would be the size of a tennis court. That's amazing to me, and all contained within your body. So close your eyes, find a nice, comfortable seat. You can do this standing up, you can do it lying down, you can do it seated. If you are seated, nice straight spine. Lift the crown of the head up towards the ceiling, your jaw parallel to the floor. Drop the shoulders, relax the arms. Let the hands rest in your lap or on your thighs, whatever is most appropriate or comfortable for you. Close your eyes and just come to the rhythm of your breath. Just notice your breath breathing itself. No need to change it, no need to alter it, just your breath breathing itself. Now, wherever you are in your breath cycle, exhale fully now, and then inhale. Nice long inhalation all the way up. The top of the inhalation, top it off. Exhale. There we go. Inhale. Top it off. And out. Inhale. Top it off. And out. Let your body relax. Two more. Inhale. Top it off. And out. And just let go. Last one. Inhale. Top it off. And out. Let your breath return to normal and gently open the eyes. Okay. That was the physiological sigh. Now, I will tell you that at night, when I'm in bed and if I have to get to sleep and I'm struggling, again, stress affects our sleep. Remember that. I'll do this. However, I won't have an open mouth sigh. What I do when I'm in bed at night, only because my husband, I don't want to wake him up, is we have a technique called ujjayi breath in yoga, and it's a tightening of the muscles in the throat. So it almost sounds like a replication of the ocean. So I will inhale, I'll top it off. And when I go to exhale, it'll sound like I'm sighing, but my mouth is not open. And I don't think my speakers will pick up on it, but it's a kind of a, and you can hear the sound. The sound of the Ujjayi breath reverberates through the skull, and it actually is extremely calming. That Ujjayi breath is beautiful. The other technique I'm going to teach you as we're heading into summer and it's getting hotter and hotter is a breath technique called Sheetly breath. And we're going to practice this with the lips like puckered, like you're blowing through a tiny straw, like a coffee stirrer. So you'll inhale through the nostrils and then you breathe out through softly pursed lips. So just watch me just for a moment. When you do this, you want the inhalation to be longer than you want the inhalation to be shorter than the exhalation. The exhalation will be always longer in Sheetly breath because, again, this way you're engaging the belly. You are using the vagus nerve to tell your brain that you're trying to relax, okay? Now, the beautiful thing about Sheetly breath, and I want you to try it, but when you do so, bring the palm of one hand up in front of you so that when you exhale with those softly pursed lips, you do so in the palm of your hand. And you can actually feel how calming and cooling this is. Okay, so ready to give it a try? All right, nice straight spine. Okay, crown of the head lifted towards the ceiling. Here we go. Inhale through the nostrils. Exhale through softly pursed lips. Inhale and out. Last one, inhale. So typically when you practice this, you don't put your hand up in front of the face. You just practice the Sheetly breath. I just wanted you to be able to feel the impact of it. Because if you were to go, you feel the heat of your breath in the palm of your hand. But if you go, it's very cooling. So this is something you can do any time of the day to lower the body temperature. A lot of times you might see somebody doing it in the gym. They just don't realize it's actually cooling the body down in a beautifully great way. This is so important and so great for any woman who's having any hormonal fluctuations going through menopause. It will help you manage when you're having hot flashes. A very simple technique that is very, very profound in its effects. So we have the physiological sigh, the double inhalation followed by one long exhalation, and the Sheetly breath, inhaling through the nose, exhaling through softly pursed lips. And with that pursing of the lips, if you're not sure if it is small enough, think about when you get something hot, you're trying to blow on it to cool it down for your child to eat or to taste. That's how you want to breathe on and breathe out. Okay. So I want to thank you for tuning in. I hope that these two tricks are something that you can easily integrate into your daily practice, your daily life. But I can promise you this doing it 5 times at a time, 5 minutes in the morning, 5 minutes midday, 5 minutes before you get home from work, 5 minutes before bed. something along the way to help cool the body, calm the body, to help to begin to de-stress, to distance yourself between you and your reactive habit patterns that are caused by stress, and beginning to put stress back in the passenger seat and you and your best self in the driver's seat. So stress in the passenger seat, it puts you in the driver's seat. So thank you for tuning in. My name is Yvette Sechrist McGlasson. I have been your host for breath and managing the stress. So again, thank you and have a great day. Bye for now.